All right. So I'm going to do another challenge real quick. And this challenge is to go ahead and import the router provider, the create browser router, and the create routes from element. So the reason why we're doing this is because right now we are basically just wrapping everything in a browser router component and then putting in all of our routes. And that's how we're navigating through our pages. But instead, what we want to do is import these three things so that we can use the data layer API, which is going to give us access to a lot of different things. So I'm going to try my best to kind of explain everything and try to make sense of it. So we don't need link up here anymore, but what we can go ahead and provide is the router provider, and then we can import the create browser router and the create routes from elements. So now that we have all of these imported, what we basically want to do is we want to go above the function. I believe it's above the function. Const router, yep, above the function. Just need to make sure I'm doing this right. And we want to say const router, and we want to equal the router to create browser router. And basically all that create browser router is doing is that it's basically going to take in one of our routes, which is kind of like an object. So I have a better way of illustrating this. What we get from our browser router or these routes is something like an array of objects for each route. That gives us the path, which is this path right here, and then it gives us the element. And then if it's nested like these over here, what we'll get is the children. So basically, now that we have our router and our create browser router, we want to pass another method inside of it, or function, or method inside of it, and that is going to be create routes from elements. And that's because create browser router is going to expect that these are turned into objects, but they're not. So this create routes from elements is going to allow us to go ahead and do that. So when we open it, what we can do now is, I think we could just take all of these routes here and we can go ahead and command X or command X. Oh, let's just delete it that way. Just trying to use a shortcut there. So I think we could just go ahead and put everything inside of our router like this. And our return from the app is going to be different now. So instead of using browser router, we're going to use the router provider, and we're going to pass it a prop called router. And this router prop is going to contain our router variable that we created up here that's converting all of these route from elements so that the create browser router can read it, and then we will be able to work with loaders and sad paths without having to repeat API calls. So we can say router, and I don't know if this will work just yet. It won't work. So let's just see what error I'm getting. So routes is not a route component, must be a route or React fragment. Okay, so I'm gonna look over here for a second and see what's going on. So I think what was happening here is that this is not a opening and closing tag, it's self-closing. So let's refresh. It may not fix the issue. So yeah, it doesn't fix the issue, but I think we're one step closer. So another thing is maybe we don't need routes anymore. So let's remove routes and let's go ahead and refresh. And now we're getting everything working. So I think the reason why we don't need routes anymore is because it's being placed inside this create routes from elements and then the create browser router, and everything should be working exactly how we expect it. And then we're going to return the router provider, which is going to take what we get as a result of both the create browser router and then create routes from elements. So this is basically just letting us use components and then converting it into the browser router, placing it into this variable, and then providing it for the user on the application. And if I compare this to my other one, it's exactly what's happening. So we don't have this surrounded in routes anymore, but we go ahead and create routes from elements and then create browser routers, and then everything is working exactly how it should work. And I guess we don't need the routes keyword anymore, but I'm going to leave it there just for reference. So that's pretty much it for the challenge, I think. Let me see. Create a router variable and use the functions. Yep. And then pass the router variable router prop. And yep. So I think that's pretty much it for this challenge.